Hello everyone! Thanks for coming back for another collection of mini reviews. Here's what else I saw in July that I didn't already tell you about. For those of you who might be wondering, I did not watch any 1776 for the 4th of July this year. I like to catch some of it, preferably at least the last hour, because that's where the real meaty debate stuff is, but the timing didn't work out this year. That's fine, though. I do not like to overwatch my favorite movies, and I'm not someone who has to watch certain things on specific holidays, so I'm okay with taking a break. And I still thought about it, even if I didn't watch it. On to the list. Movie number 1 is 1955's The Eternal Sea. Sterling Hayden stars in this biographical picture as an ambitious naval captain eager for command of a ship during World War II. When he finally gets his opportunity, he's seriously wounded in battle, jeopardizing his entire career. At first, Sterling Hayden seemed like an unusual fit for this role, but gradually the casting began to make more sense. Though I don't find him a particularly expressive actor, he was good at capturing the man's stubbornness, and after reading about Hayden's life, it actually is appropriate for him to play a heroic naval officer. For a minute there, the story seemed awfully similar to the fictional protagonist's frustrations in Herman Wouk's The Winds of War, which was published in 1971. I'm not claiming there's any connection, it was just uncanny. That was only at the beginning, though. Alexis Smith plays the dutiful wife who honors her husband's wishes, even when they clash with her own, and Dean Jagger has a significant supporting role as an encouraging admiral who has an occasional twinkle in his eye. I went into this having no clue what it was about, and I was pleasantly surprised to learn it was such an inspiring, true story. Movie number 2 is the 1959 version of The 39 Steps, starring Kenneth More as Richard Hannay, who stumbles across a spy ring and finds himself wanted for murder, with police and bad guys chasing him into Scotland. My loyalty to the 1935 version, directed by Alfred Hitchcock and starring the lovely Robert Donat, is strong, and my mom has a soft spot for the more recent version starring Rupert Penry-Jones, so I wasn't sure how this was gonna go. Those two adaptations vary quite a lot, so I wondered, where would this one fall? Initially, it seemed like it was going to do its own thing, and then it became more of a shot-for-shot remake. However, I don't say that as a criticism. It was interesting to see what little things were changed, and how some things might even have been improved. The most curious thing is that the film doesn't feel like 1959. It feels like the 1930s film, but in color, with different actors. Kenneth More has a lot of fun as the energetic hero. He's charming, even boisterous, and he takes everything in stride. The ladies tend to throw themselves at him, the major exception being his co-star, the straight-laced schoolmistress played by Tina Elg. Michael Goodliffe also appears as one of the bad guys, which is a bit funny to me and my mom, since we associate both him and Kenneth More with their roles in 1958's A Night to Remember. Was it familiar? Did I know what was going to happen pretty much all the time? Yes, but I was thoroughly entertained by this version of the story. I had great fun with it, and boy was it cheeky. Movie number 3 is 1961's Gorgo. An underwater volcano triggers the emergence of a giant prehistoric beast that attacks a Gaelic island. A passing ship's crew manages to capture it and sells it to a London circus, which, surprise, surprise, turns out to be a dumb decision. I feel like I watched this ages ago. July was a long month. I was intending to do a solo review of Gorgo, and then I watched it and I realized I didn't have that much to say. It's an okay film. It's half 1954 Godzilla, half 1933 King Kong, with a dash of Jurassic Park: The Lost World thrown into the third act. It was directed by Eugene Laurier, who also directed 1953's The Beast from 40,000 Fathoms. That film, based on a Ray Bradbury story, allegedly helped inspire Toho's Gojira, so it all comes full circle. Unfortunately, Gorgo is kind of rough. The monster itself looks convincing, with glowing red eyes, sharp teeth, slightly baggy body, but the film doesn't always succeed at conveying its immensity. And the bigger issue is that the characters and the script are weak. Bill Travers' captain is a peculiar kind of protagonist who thinks more about money than anything else, and the whole group is kind of unscrupulous and not too bright. There really isn't anyone you like. And while it does have some noteworthy imagery and nice color, it looks kind of weird sometimes. That might be because we watched it on YouTube in high definition, and I'm not sure the higher pixel count did it any favors. Rumor has it that in 1969, John Carpenter made a short film titled Gorgo vs. Godzilla. Sadly, it's never been released, if it even exists. You won't want to miss this if you're a kaiju enthusiast and you make a point of seeing all Godzilla-adjacent movies. But while it has a decent twist, the destruction of a couple famous landmarks is well done, and the ending is actually kind of cute, these brief moments of interest punctuate long stretches of mundanity, with stuff that's been done better in other, older films. Movie number 4 is one I've been looking forward to watching all season, 1955's Summertime. Katharine Hepburn plays a spinster from Akron, Ohio, making a solo journey to marvel at the sights and sounds of Venice. But though she's an eager and fearless tourist, she quickly learns that such a romantic city isn't so enjoyable when you're alone. Thank goodness for Rossano Brazzi, who plays an antiques seller who sweeps her off her feet for a once-in-a-lifetime romance. Katharine Hepburn may seem an odd choice for such a film, but she sells it so well that any doubts quickly vanish. What I wasn't prepared for is how melancholy the first part of the film would be. New friends invite her to join them, but she doesn't want to be the awkward third wheel, so she declines, concealing her embarrassment with a grin and a bluster of nonchalance. In reality, though, she's choking back tears, struggling not to succumb to loneliness and self-pity. Ouch. So, Rossano Brazzi's entrance is very welcome, and not just because he was an extraordinarily attractive man. He's taken with her from the first moment he sees her, much to her astonishment and dismay. And soon, between these two strangers from different parts of the world, sparks fly. Summertime was directed by David Lean, who captures the natural and architectural beauty of Venice while revisiting one or two themes he touched on in 1945's Brief Encounter. I know a lot of people love that movie. It didn't do it for me, and I have reasons why, which I won't go into. I also have a couple reservations with this one as well. There were certain factors that diminished my ability to enjoy the romance and just embrace the philosophy of love presented here. I also found Brazzi got a little too pushy at one point. I didn't like that either. So this didn't turn out to be my new favorite in the romantic fling in Italy subgenre, but I did really like the film overall. It's beautiful looking, I was happy with the characters' chemistry, I found the relationship touching, and I enjoyed the scampish little boy who forces Hepburn to accept him as an escort in her first dreary days. Also, yes, this is the movie where Hepburn falls into the canal, and they did multiple takes without realizing the water was contaminated, and she got conjunctivitis that left her eyes watery for the rest of her life. That part isn't so romantic. Movie number 5 is 1976's Assault on Precinct 13. A police lieutenant's first day on the job turns into a nightmare when a bloodthirsty gang targets an undermanned station on the verge of closure in a depressed area of Los Angeles. This came up on the Criterion Channel. I can't remember if it was featured in a set of films that take place in one night or films with synth soundtracks. It fits both categories. It was written and directed by John Carpenter, who also composed the music, an excellent score that perfectly complements the story beats. And it was nothing like the action-heavy shoot-'em-up I expected. While it has a high body count, including at least one shocking death, it's not a hard R. There's no sex or nudity, the language is moderate, violence is moderate by today's standards, and it actually focuses on the characters and their shifting dynamics. It's an odd group that has to band together to keep the bad guys out. The first half is a little slow, but not poorly paced, and it does a great job setting things up. Then when the action does get going, it's very tense, thanks in large part to the ruthlessness and tenacity of the mostly faceless gang members. It was after this that Carpenter made his name as a horror director with the first 3 Halloween films, The Fog and The Thing, but I was struck by how much this feels like a horror movie, with its ominous tone, its moody lighting, and the threatening but impersonal enemy surging forward. I wasn't too shocked to learn afterward that Carpenter and company were inspired by The Night of the Living Dead. It's a simple film, and you can probably see indications of its modest budget, but I think it's all the better for that simplicity. It includes standout performances from Austin Stoker, Darwin Jostin, and Laurie Zimmer. I was pleasantly surprised by the strength of the cast and the script, which had some very good lines and even some clever and humorous moments to relieve the tension. This came out of nowhere for me, and I thought it was pretty great. Movie number 6 is one I picked because it was short, 1941's Mr. District Attorney. In this mystery comedy, Dennis O'Keefe's goofy young lawyer of lofty pedigree has joined the DA's team, but so far he's botched every chance he's had. He's given an old case to keep him busy, but when that case starts heating up, he partners with Florence Rice's clever newspaper woman to get some answers. There's murder, there's a courtroom, there's corruption, but there's also slapstick. It was kind of all over the place, but it had a couple decent gags, some entertaining characters, and some performances that were rather good. It's got Peter Lorre in it, and of course he brings his A-game. My mom insists that we've watched this before, but I didn't recognize any of it. Movie number 7 is 1942's The Undying Monster. An old family is haunted by a legendary beast that supposedly leaves its victims either dead or insane. Somebody suggested this recently, and without looking it up, I said, "Oh, that sounds good, I'll check it out." I finally sat down to watch it, and a few minutes in, I thought it looked awfully familiar, and my mom agreed with me, but neither of us could remember anything, so we kept going. And then I suddenly did start to remember it, and I realized I hadn't really liked it. And I didn't like it much better this time. It's not a bad film. It's got plenty of atmosphere and spookiness, good sets, moody music. It's very well photographed. But I think it's bland, and characters are either boring or annoying. The main investigator, an American from Scotland Yard, is kind of aggressive, with a bull in a china shop interrogation style, while his sidekick is a woman with a huge appetite for food and creepy stories who just talks too much and gets in the way, and everyone else is unremarkable. Although this does have a very young Charles McGraw doing a British accent, I don't know if I mentioned that the first time I reviewed this. It seems like a new discovery to me this time, but the more I think about it, the more I feel like, no, I had discovered that before, I just forgot. It has so much in common with 2 other famous films which preceded it, particularly foggy films, that I just feel like it's a rip-off. One of them is The Hound of the Baskervilles. The other might be a spoiler if I tell you, although it's so obvious. Movie number 8 is 2018's Mission Impossible Fallout, the 6th entry in the Tom Cruise-led Secret Agent franchise. This one brings together old and new friends and enemies for another wild action-adventure that spans the globe. Like the 2 that came before it, it's a spectacle of exotic locales, insane stunts, and fast-paced chases and fight scenes. I do think I liked the previous 2 movies better than this one, and it feels crazy to say that, because all along I have felt like Fallout was considered the best one, everybody's favorite. When I decided to watch this series, it was partly because I heard so much praise for Fallout and I wanted to see it for myself. I still come across videos where people mention it and rave about it. And so I was really looking forward to it, and now I've seen it, and I confess I was a little underwhelmed. I don't know if there was just so much hype that I ended up experiencing disappointment, or if I've gotten Mission Impossible fatigue. I did like it. It was nice to see Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, and Rebecca Ferguson as part of the team again, plus Michelle Monaghan comes back. I don't think she appeared in the last film. Henry Cavill joins the team. I am kind of bummed I didn't like his character more. He is an absolutely lovely person in real life, but he didn't do anything for me here. The action and chases were smashing as usual. I especially enjoyed the foot chase where Benji's telling Ethan where to go, but he doesn't know that he's not on street level. That brought a few good laughs. And it was interesting how this storyline dealt with unfinished business from the previous film. But I got overcooked. At over 2.5 hours, this felt like too much. Too many twists and double crosses and aha, I was a step ahead of you all along moments. And I know that's par for the course with this series, but I started to feel kind of dazed, and then by the helicopter chase, I was ready for the end. I've never heard anyone else express frustration or tedium with this entry. Like I said, I am under the impression that it's almost universally a favorite. So I think it makes a huge difference that I didn't let enough time go by since I watched the last one. I will certainly wait longer before I watch Dead Reckoning. Movie number 9 is 1970's The McKenzie Break, World War II film about a German POW camp in Scotland where prisoners have been raising a ruckus, rioting and refusing to cooperate with the staff. Brian Keith stars as an unruly, unconventional Irish officer who's sent to whip the camp into shape, but he finds himself opposed by a charismatic U-boat captain, played by Helmut Graham, who's taken command in order to direct a massive escape attempt. The story's an interesting one, and it builds to an exciting finish, but it's also kind of an unpleasant film, and I didn't really like it. It's actually got a lot of cleverness, what with the way the plot develops, and the contrast between the conniving, despicable Nazi and the slippery protagonist. I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't care for the look, or the style, or the characters, and then I nodded off for a while in the middle. It has its moments, but there was just something about it. I wouldn't choose to watch it again. Movie number 10 is 1958's The Last Hurrah, a John Ford film that stars Spencer Tracy as Frank Skeffington, a sitting mayor who's running for re-election one last time. Beloved by many, he expects an easy victory, but his political enemies are determined to get rid of him. This is a no-politics zone, though I have very strong views of my own. I keep them to myself, and I appreciate it if others do the same. Talking about this movie feels dangerously close to a violation, and as a matter of fact, the DVD stopped working with just a couple minutes left, and I thought, that gets me off the hook. Can't review a movie I didn't finish. But I have decided to go ahead with it anyway, and I'll just have to trust you fine folks to behave yourselves and not make me regret it. Spencer Tracy's Mayor Skeffington is as kind and generous as he is sly and manipulative. Certain acts may seem like they're being done out of the goodness of his Irish Catholic heart, but there's always an ulterior motive, and the gangster-like men of his inner circle take care of the unsavory side of business while he maintains a mostly pure public image. The many contrasts in Skeffington's character make it hard to decide if you like him or not, or if you'd vote for him or not. This is an adaptation of a best-selling novel by Edwin O'Connor, who based his protagonist on James Michael Curley, the controversial four-time mayor of Boston, who was loved and hated in about equal measure. The film's got a strong supporting cast. One of my favorites, Jeffrey Hunter, co-stars as the nephew Skeffington takes under his wing, hoping to make him his successor. Honestly, he's the real reason why I got this out of the library, and I was not disappointed. I have yet to be unimpressed by Jeffrey Hunter in anything. Also featured are Pat O'Brien, Basil Rathbone, John Carradine, Donald Crisp, Anna Lee, Edward Brophy, James Gleason, Frank McHugh, Jane Darwell, Wallace Ford, and a bunch of other familiar faces. John Ford didn't make bad movies, but I was taken aback by some glaring continuity errors in this. There's one scene with Tracy and Hunter that was surprisingly sloppy, and that made it distracting. That said, if you're not watching Jeffrey Hunter the way I do, you might not even notice. I didn't come away thinking this was one of Ford's best, but I did like it. Movie number 11 is 1956's The Last Wagon. Richard Widmark stars as Comanche Todd, a man wanted for murder who's being dragged into town to be executed when he and his captor cross paths with a small wagon train headed west. The peace-loving travelers object to the abusive manhandling the prisoner receives, though his own wily behavior makes them wary of coming to his defense. And when an Apache attack leaves 6 young people to fend for themselves, they have little choice but to turn to Comanche Todd for help. I thought this was a very good film. It's well made, it's beautifully shot, Lionel Newman's score is rousing, and if you're a Richard Widmark fan like my mom, there's a lot to make you happy here. Widmark not only carries the film, he gets to play pretty much every possible angle you could ask for. It's also an active role, with him running all over, getting dragged around and knocked down while in shackles, yet he also has a stirring dramatic scene near the end. The other featured characters, though a bit exaggerated at times, are also solid, actors including Felicia Farr, Nick Adams, Susan Kohner, and Stephanie Griffin. It had a couple developments you could see coming, and the wrap-up is a bit quick and cutesy, but I didn't mind that, and the film was still full of surprises, so all in all, I found it a satisfying and occasionally tense experience with some unexpected depth. Movie number 12 is 1963's High and Low. Toshiro Mifune plays the factory manager for a ladies' shoe company who is about to seize control of the business when a kidnapper calls demanding an outrageous ransom in exchange for his son. It's quickly discovered that his chauffeur's son has been taken by mistake, but the anonymous caller still demands the money in exchange for the boy's life, plunging Mifune into an ethical dilemma, for if he pays, he'll lose everything he has. Based on one of Ed McBain's 87th Precinct books, I haven't read them, but my brother has, this is a solid crime thriller from director Akira Kurosawa that keeps you on the edge of your seat, albeit sometimes in a deceptively calm way, throughout its 143-minute length. The shifting of perspectives keeps the story moving without giving anything away, and we feel like participants in the detective work. The switch to a police procedural brought Fritz Lang's M to mind, but the film also has shades of Kurosawa's own Stray Dog from 1949, which also starred Mifune, also had The Hunt for a Criminal, taking place in the middle of a sweltering heat wave. I've reviewed both of those movies, if you're curious. Toshiro Mifune grabs your attention no matter what film he's in, no matter what kind of character he's playing, so it goes without saying that he's great here. I recognized many other familiar faces, actors I've come to know from other Toho films, including the funny little boy from Ozu's Good Morning. And the filmmaking? It's Kurosawa. Of course it's good. Thanks to his genius for blocking and deep focus, the frame is often loaded with information and points of interest, which enhances both the storytelling and the aesthetic appeal. I feel like I say the same thing every time I talk about a Kurosawa movie. I say, oh, it had all these people in it, and it was great to see all these familiar faces, yay, and then I say, and then the filmmaking, and then the cinematography, or something along those lines. I'm following the same template here, but he's wonderfully consistent. Other elements that stand out to me include the chauffeur's helpless, humble posture, the good-natured attitude of the detectives, that tense scene in the nightclub, the ghostliness of Dope Alley, and that highly reflective pair of sunglasses. It touches on so many themes, too. It's just a great film. And it's one of those things where the more I think about it, the more impressed I am, and the more I feel like I could say. I've been looking for the right opportunity to watch this for many months now, really it's been years, and I'm thrilled to report that after the prolonged wait, it lived up to my expectations. And movie number 13 is 2022's The Lost King. This true story recounts how one woman, played by Sally Hawkins, becomes determined to find the lost body of Richard III and clear his name of malignant 500-year-old rumors. This was recommended to me a couple weeks ago after I talked about reading The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tey, which I loved. It delves into the mystery of the princes in the tower. Were they really murdered, and was Richard behind it, as Shakespeare's famous play claims? 2 people in the comments said, "Hey, if you like that book, you should watch this movie." I had never heard of it before, I looked it up, and I immediately was like, I've got to order that. I remember when they found Richard's body back in 2012. It was stunning news. Even then, I was fascinated by the subject, but I never knew the story of how it all came about. This film fills in the details. And like its protagonist, it's on a mission of its own to set the record straight. Though others may have taken credit, it's Philippa Langley whose passion and drive led to this significant historical discovery. The film covers the setbacks and the frustrations, but also the way her bewildered family supported her and how marginalized Richard III fans rallied to the cause. Yet while the research and the hunt are very interesting to me because I'm a nerd, the thing that makes this film particularly creative and delightful is the appearance of Richard III himself. Philippa starts seeing visions of the alleged usurper of the throne of England, and as he is played by Harry Lloyd, he is young and charismatic, not deformed, with a sensitivity and a sense of humor that's appealing. Though he's a ghost, he's a very human figure, and their scenes together stole the show. The film's stirring score was composed by Alexandre Desplat, and the main titles are a fascinating imitation of those done for Alfred Hitchcock by Saul Bass, with Bernard Herrmann's music in North by Northwest and Psycho. I don't know the reason for this tribute, since this film isn't really like a Hitchcock movie in any other way, but I did appreciate it nonetheless, and it's unmistakable. I was thinking it, and then my mom said it. She said, you know, if somebody was listening to this movie from another room, they would think that we had just started watching a Hitchcock movie. And then the titles started moving a certain way, and I was like, that's North by Northwest. That's absolutely what they're doing here. It was very exciting. I don't know why, but it was cool. And in general, I very much liked the movie. If you're thinking it looks too cutesy, it's really not, and it's thanks in large part to Sally Hawkins' performance. It keeps the film grounded, and it was the perfect follow-up to one of my favorite reads of the year. And that takes care of all the movies I watched in July. I saw some really good ones, so I hope you found a couple to pique your interest, and I hope you enjoyed the video. You can find a list of the films in the description, and I invite you to share your thoughts on any you may have seen in the comments below, and I'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.